Next game we're talking about, Dawn, is Notre Dame against Army at Yankee Stadium, actually, in a 7 p.m. game on NBC. This is a game with enormous playoff consequences for both teams because Notre Dame, they have a 9-1 record this year, and they don't play in a conference title game because they're not in a conference right now. So that another loss for Notre Dame would pretty much kill probably their chances of making a college football playoff. They do have a win over Texas A&M in week 1, but it's almost negated by a very bad loss in Northern Illinois the very next week. And outside of that win over the Aggies, their next best win is over a Louisville team that just lost to Stanford and is now 6-4 on the season. So really, Notre Dame's schedule, I don't know if it's good enough to get in at 10-2. Probably is not good enough to get in, honestly, at 10-2 with all the schools that are currently fighting to get into the college football playoff right now. And then Army, they're 9-0 on the season. They're one of only 3 undefeated teams left in the country alongside Oregon and Indiana. If they beat Notre Dame, I would think that they would jump Boise State in the college football playoff rankings and be the highest ranked group of 5 team. Then they got to beat UTSA, and if they got to beat Tulane, who's also another ranked team as well, in the American Championship game. If they do that, I think they'll secure a college football playoff spot at 12-0 initially when the playoff rankings come out, and then they'll be 13-0 maybe if they beat Navy after that. If they lose this game, they're still alive for the playoff, but they'll need Boise State to mess up in order to get into the playoff.
Yeah, that's going to be a debate. Where did they have Boise in the ranking last week?
12.
Oh, I don't know if they would do it because I think
you
Army
have to, man. I think you have to.
Yeah,
I don't think they would either.
Yeah, but that means you're putting Army in the top 11. I don't know that they would.
I wouldn't have Boise that high to begin with, to be honest.
I get that. I totally get that part because they did lose to Oregon, which by 3 points at the buzzer, which is cool. I mean, it's great that they could compete with the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah.
But no, a win like this would change. It would change the perception some, or does it? I mean, could it put on the table that you get both? I don't know. I don't know that they would actually do it, but you would also have Army needing to beat Tulane in a conference title game, which is
huge too.
Nowhere near an easy win. As Tulane is really, really good. They're raging hot right now. But no, this game, I'll tell you what, and I know that scenario is what it is. Every team looking for an at-large is rooting for Army to win this game.
Yeah.
No question. That's a spot. That's actually now become the biggest spoiler spot is the fact that Notre Dame is in over, who knows if it's a Tennessee or an Ole Miss or whoever might be on the borderline, A&M. Every other team is rooting for Notre Dame to lose this game or next week against USC.
Yeah, so Notre Dame really an elimination game, and Army is just trying to solidify itself as a college football playoff team with a win over Notre Dame. Dalton, you have the Army offense in this one. What should we be looking out for when they have the ball?
Okay, so Army's offense is still, unlike Navy, it's still the more traditional double wing, triple option, under center kind of old school thing. It's not like Navy. They throw the ball a lot less than Navy. Army's really kind of stayed in the tradition of the classic triple option. I think for me, this is more about Notre Dame's run defense. And I think if you remember when we previewed them against Georgia Tech, I kind of had mentioned their run defense is kind of off this year. Like some guys in the middle, Howard Cross, Jack Kaiser, like it's like they haven't gotten in a rhythm. All right. They had a bye week in week 5. Let's look at it bye week in week 6. Let's look at it since week 7. All right. They've really turned it around in run defense now. Before their bye week in week 6, they were 75th in the country in run defense grade. It was just not, something about it wasn't right. Since that point, since week 7, they're up to 7th. They look like the Notre Dame defense that we know and love, right? And I think those two guys are a big factor in that. Jack Kaiser at linebacker playing a lot better. Howard Cross at defensive tackle playing a lot better. And they're getting some contributions from guys that, they got some guys transferred in, some guys are newer, younger guys, right? Jordan Clark in the slot, he's been really good. They moved Rod Hurd, who I figured was competing with Jordan Clark for snaps in the slot. They moved him to safety. He's been solid. Even a guy like Leonard Moore at corner has a 90 run defense grade. Cross has been better. Drake Bowe and Jack Kaiser, they've gotten contributions all over the place in run defense. And that's obviously going to be the biggest thing against Bryson Daly and this Army triple option attack. He's got 1,000 yards. He's got 21 touchdowns. The only player with more is Ashton Ginty. So this is a much more classic triple option versus big-time front seven matchup than we got against Navy. I was expecting Navy to come out and, they throw the ball more. They throw the ball like 3 times more than Army does. This is a more classic matchup of one team is up front and one team is stacking the box and we're going to beat each other to death, and Army leads the nation in run blocking grade. It's going to be a physical running football game, really on both sides of the ball, but especially on this side, it's going to look a little bit different than the Navy game, a little more straightforward. But Notre Dame's run defense, they are well prepared, and they're playing like an elite unit lately.
They have been, and honestly, it's the same match from the other side of the ball as this Notre Dame run game. Can they impose their will in the run game? Because Dolan, the last time they faced off against a military academy, it was able to ride that run game to victory against Navy. They ran for 270 yards and 4 touchdowns against the midshipmen, averaging 6.9 yards per carry and 3 yards before contact per carry. They're getting 3 yards before they're even contacting the ball carrier. 3 different players in that game had at least 50 yards rushing and a touchdown in Jeremiah Love, Kedron Young, and Riley Leonard in that game. Notre Dame has been dominant on the ground all year. There wasn't just one game where they're really good. They are second in the Power 4 in EPA per run. They are second in the Power 4 in yards per carry, and they're second in the Power 4 in rushing grade this year. The offensive line has had some issues in pass protection, but they've been really good at moving people in the run game. They're 8th in the Power 4 in run blocking grade so far this year. Army, though, has done a really good job of limiting opposing rushing attacks this year, only allowing 4 yards per carry, which is 11th among all defenses in America. Only 2.6 of those yards come after contact, the 4th fewest in America. So they'll really need to play up to that level against Notre Dame and force Riley Leonard to beat them through the air, because if not, if Riley Leonard's able to run the ball on them and all the other great running backs Notre Dame's had to run the ball on them as well, I don't think Army stands much of a chance in this game. But if they force Riley Leonard into obvious passing situations, then the Black Knights stand a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you have to do. You got to get Notre Dame behind the chains, but they're really tough to get behind the chains right now. These backs and Riley Leonard's legs as well, they've really leaned into what they should be as an offense, is run the hell out of the ball. Riley Leonard throws it 20 to 25 times a game, and he just doesn't make mistakes. They have found the groove that they need to on offense, and they've got a lot of threats, and as always, they've got a good offensive line in front of them that's getting it done. So Notre Dame, they've really, I think they've done a nice job on both sides of the ball, finding the wheelhouse of what their team should be this year.
Yeah, definitely. So, Dalton, in this game in Yankee Stadium, who will ultimately keep their playoff hopes alive?
I think it's Notre Dame. I think, you know what, I thought the Navy game was dangerous, and they kind of proved, although Navy made a lot of mistakes in that game, and you just can't do that against a team like this, I think Notre Dame proved that that's not dangerous to them. And Army, you know, a couple weeks ago they beat North Texas 14-3, and to only score 14 points on a defense like North Texas is kind of concerning to me, because that's not a great defense, and Army hasn't played a lot of great defenses. Actually, the best FBS team that they've played this year is East Carolina at 6-4. This is a different caliber of football. I really like what Army's done this year. They very well could win the American. It's going to be a really fun game with Tulane, but I think Notre Dame, they're riding it right now. They're feeling really good about their chances to win these last 2 games, to make the playoff, to be 11-1, and then they win football games their way. They found their identity. So I've got Notre Dame 35-13.
Yeah, I got Notre Dame as well, 31-17. 31-14, excuse me. Listen, dude, Army's offense has really just struggled the last 2 games, right? They averaged 17 points per game against North Texas and Air Force. And Dalton, those are 2 well below average defenses at the Group of 5 level. You go up against a top 10 defense like Notre Dame, I don't know how you're going to get right against them, honestly. So I think the Fighting Irish will win convincingly in Yankee Stadium, and now with USC on the horizon next week, that's the only time they have to mess up their year. I think if they beat USC and they beat Army, they will be in the comfortable playoff at 11-1. So I think they'll take care of business against Army and win by multiple scores against the Black Knights at Yankee Stadium. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.